The theater was packed, every seat taken, every light dimmed. Jonathan Roumie had just finished speaking about faith, about hope, about playing Jesus on The Chosen. The audience was warm, leaning into every word. Then, a small voice from the back of the room. Mr. Roumie. Heads turned. It was a little girl, maybe 8 years old, standing in the aisle, clutching a stuffed lamb against her chest. Jonathan smiled warmly. Yes, sweetheart. She took a small step forward. Her voice trembled, but it carried. I talked to Jesus. The room went silent, not the kind of silence that's empty. The kind that's heavy, full. Jonathan's smile softened. You talked to Jesus? She nodded, big eyes shimmering under the stage lights. Yes, and he told me something. Jonathan glanced at the moderator, then back at her. What did he tell you? The girl hugged the lamb tighter. That you're doing exactly what he wanted you to do. Jonathan's breath caught. He blinked slowly, like the words had just pierced something deeper than he was ready for. A murmur passed through the audience, soft gasps, a few sniffles. Sweetheart, Jonathan said gently, how did you talk to him? Her answer was simple, matter of fact. In my room, at night, I told him I was scared my mommy might not get better, and then I felt him hug me. Not with arms, but in here. She pressed a small hand to her chest. Jonathan's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came. His eyes were wet now. The moderator stepped forward, ready to guide the conversation back on track. But Jonathan raised a hand, softly, signaling, no, this moment stays. He walked to the edge of the stage, kneeled down, and said quietly, so the whole room had to lean in. What you just said is the most important thing I've heard all year. Jonathan stayed kneeling at the edge of the stage, his eyes locked on the little girl. What's your name, sweetheart? He asked softly. Lila, she said, barely above a whisper. Lila, Jonathan repeated, like he was trying to remember it forever. How old are you? 8. He nodded slowly, his gaze drifting for a moment, like her age alone had just pulled up some memory buried deep in him. Lila, he said again, you said your mommy might not get better. Is she sick? The little girl's lips trembled. She has something in her blood. The doctors say it's bad. A heavy silence settled in the room. You could feel the air grow warmer, heavier, almost holy. Jonathan took a slow breath. And when you prayed, you felt him? Yes, she said. It was like I wasn't in my room anymore. It was really bright, and I wasn't scared. Jonathan's eyes softened, but his jaw tightened. It was as if he was holding back an ocean. Lila, he said gently, sometimes people think talking to Jesus has to be big, loud, with all the right words. But you've just told me the truth of it. It's simple, it's close, and it's real. The girl shifted, still hugging her lamb. He told me to tell you not to be afraid either. Jonathan froze. He swallowed hard, but his Adam's apple trembled as he did. Not to be afraid. She nodded. Because you were about something you have to do. The audience shifted, some exchanging glances. They didn't know what she meant, but Jonathan did. You could see it in the way his face changed. His eyes darted away for just a moment, as if he was trying to hide it. Then he looked back at her. What did he say about it? The girl's answer came without hesitation. He said you already know the answer. You just have to say yes. Jonathan's hand went to his mouth. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't for the crowd. That was the look of a man who just had something private ripped out into the open. The moderator stepped closer, concerned. Jonathan, do you want to pause? He shook his head slowly. No, this is the whole reason I came here tonight. He turned back to Lila. Can I ask you something? She nodded. When you saw him, what did he look like? The little girl smiled, an innocent, almost glowing smile. He looked like you, but not you. He had your eyes, but they were bigger and full of light. Jonathan's mouth parted just slightly. His voice broke as he whispered, yeah, that's him. A woman in the third row covered her mouth with her hands, tears spilling over. Somewhere in the back, a man muttered, my God, under his breath. The moderator finally said what everyone was thinking. Jonathan, are you okay? He turned toward the audience, voice thick but steady. Do you understand? This little girl just spoke a truth I've been avoiding for months. Gasps, whispers. A couple of people nodded like they already knew where this was going. Jonathan continued, I've been afraid. Afraid to say yes to something God's been asking me to do. And tonight, He sent her, he gestured toward Lila, to tell me it's time. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Jonathan turned back to her. Lila, thank you. The little girl shrugged, almost shy. I was just doing what he told me. Jonathan let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. That's all any of us are supposed to do. Jonathan took a step back, his hands clasped in front of his face like he was trying to hold something together that was about to break apart. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the stage lights. He finally lowered his hands. His voice was quieter now, but somehow heavier. For months, I've felt God asking me to do something that terrifies me. He let the words hang in the air. People leaned forward in their seats. Not to act in another show. Not to take on a bigger role in Hollywood. No, it's something I can't hide behind a character for. Something I can't rehearse for. He swallowed, glancing at the floor. He's been asking me to step into real ministry. To travel, to speak, to call people back to him. Not as Jonathan the actor, but as a man who loves Jesus. The crowd stirred, some gasps, some murmurs of approval. Jonathan's voice thickened. And I've been saying, Lord, I'm not qualified. I'm not good enough. I'm scared I'll fail you. He paused, looking over at Lila again. And tonight, this little girl, without knowing me, tells me, don't be afraid. Just say yes. He let out a trembling laugh. That's not coincidence. That's God showing up. The moderator stepped forward, his own eyes glistening. Jonathan, what do you want to say now? Jonathan's chest rose as he took a deep breath, his gaze fixed straight ahead, not at the audience, not at the lights, but at something beyond all of it. I want to say, yes, Lord. Yes. The words came out with such force, the microphone caught the slight crack in his voice. The audience erupted in applause. Some stood, others just sat there in stunned silence, tears rolling down their cheeks. But Jonathan wasn't finished. He stepped closer to the edge of the stage, looking at the crowd like he was seeing every individual face. I don't know what your yes is. Maybe it's forgiving someone who hurt you. Maybe it's starting something God's been nudging you toward for years. Maybe it's letting go of something that's been choking the life out of you. But if a child can hear his voice and obey it without fear, what's our excuse? His words hung heavy, cutting through the air like they were meant for each heart in the room. Lila, still holding her lamb, tilted her head. You said yes, she said softly. Jonathan smiled, his eyes wet. I did. Then she added, he's happy. It was such a simple statement, but it hit him like a tidal wave. Jonathan's shoulders shook as he knelt down again, this time not to question, not to explain, just to say, thank you, Lila. The audience could hear the raw gratitude in his voice. Not just to her, but to God. A woman in the front row sobbed openly, clutching her husband's arm. A man in the back quietly whispered a prayer. In that moment, it didn't feel like a Q&A. It didn't feel like a celebrity appearance. It felt like a sacred appointment, something none of them had planned for, but all of them were meant to witness. Jonathan finally stood, his face calmer now, like a weight had been lifted. You came here tonight for a reason, he told them. Maybe it was to hear a story about a TV show. But maybe, it was to hear from him. He didn't have to explain who him was. Every single person knew. And that's when it happened, something no one expected. The room, still buzzing with emotion, fell into a deep, strange silence. Jonathan looked around, almost startled. Then, Lila's eyes lit up. He's here, she whispered. Jonathan didn't question it. He just closed his eyes, and smiled. Jonathan didn't speak for nearly a full minute. Nobody did. The air felt thick, like something unseen had wrapped itself around the entire room. Finally, he opened his eyes. They were red, but not from sadness, more like awe. I can't explain it, he said softly. But I don't think we're supposed to explain it. Some things, you just receive. Lila smiled like she already knew. She was rocking her little stuffed lamb gently, as if the silence itself was holy. Jonathan stepped back from the microphone, almost as if he needed space to breathe. Then, slowly, he spoke again. You know, I've played Jesus on a screen. I've memorized his words. I've walked in the dust of the roads he walked, at least on a set. But tonight reminded me he's not a character. He's not a story. He's alive, and he speaks. He looked toward the ceiling. And sometimes, he speaks through the smallest, purest voices in the room. The audience was still. Nobody shuffled their seats. Even phones stayed silent. It was as if everyone feared making a sound that might break the moment. Jonathan turned toward Lila. Do you know what you did tonight? She shrugged, almost shy. I told you what he said. He laughed quietly. Yes, but you also reminded me who he is. A man in the second row wiped his eyes. A teenage girl in the back bit her lip, her mascara running. Jonathan turned back to the crowd. You're all going back to your lives after this. Back to work, back to the news, back to whatever messes and miracles are waiting for you. But if you take anything from tonight, let it be this: God still speaks. And if you want to hear him, you don't need a platform, a stage, or a title. You just need to listen like a child does, without fear, without doubt. He let the words rest in the air, giving them room to sink deep. Lila tugged at his sleeve. He bent down, and she whispered something only he could hear. Whatever it was, it made his eyes glisten all over again. Jonathan stood, his voice low but steady. She says, he wants me to pray for you all before we leave. Nobody objected, so he bowed his head, and the room followed. His prayer wasn't polished or rehearsed, it was raw, broken in places, and impossibly sincere. Lord, you sent a little girl tonight to remind me that you're not done speaking. And you're not done loving us. So I pray for every person here, that they would hear your voice, even if it comes in a whisper, even if it comes from someone they'd least expect. And give them the courage to say yes. A quiet amen moved through the crowd. When he opened his eyes, people were hugging, some were crying, others just sitting there in stunned reflection. Lila gave him one last smile before her father led her away. And as she walked out the door, Jonathan swore he heard her say, without turning back, "He's proud of you." It was a simple sentence, but it felt like the final seal on the entire night. Jonathan stood alone on the stage, the room still buzzing with what had just happened. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like an actor at all. He felt like a servant. And he knew, deep in his soul, that this was only the beginning.